You get used to the smell of blood. You get used to the lies, the noise, and the crying. But you never get used to the silence that follows something unnatural. I've been with the Harris County Sheriff's Office for more than a decade now, and most nights they tend to blend into each other. Drunks, domestic disputes, and alarms that go off for no damn reason. You start thinking you've seen it all, until something reminds you just how little you really know. This incident happened back in late August, on a Wednesday night around 11 p.m. Summer had just ended, and school was back in session, and most people were just getting back into their daily routines. It had been a relatively quiet shift, until that call came through. EMS was already en route. All dispatch had in the call slip was, mother found 17-year-old daughter unresponsive in her bedroom. Now during this time, I was only a few months off the field training program, still getting used to working solo. I rolled up to the house, single story, middle class, and the porch light was flickering, barely hanging on. The screen door was wide open. I walked onto the porch, and I knocked 2 or 3 times on the door frame. I couldn't see anybody, and a woman suddenly appeared from the far side of the living room. She was in her mid-40s, and her face looked like she had been crying for days. Red eyes, puffy cheeks, but her voice, no emotion, just flat, robotic. "Over here," she said. "I found her in her room." "Okay, is anyone else home?" "No." "Is she breathing?" "No." She turned around and started walking down the hallway. No sense of urgency, no tears, just slow, mechanical steps. Every few seconds, she would look back at me, not out of fear and not for reassurance. It was more like she was trying to make sure I was following her. We reached a door at the end of the hallway. The closer I got, the heavier the air became. Thick, clingy. I could feel my skin crawl, almost like I walked through a spider web. I opened the door. I can still see it when I close my eyes. There she was, Abby, 17, hanging from a ceiling fan by an orange extension cord. Her head was tilted unnaturally to the side, and her mouth stretched wide open in a final, silent scream. Her eyes stared at the ceiling, like she had seen something just before. Rigor mortis had set in, and the smell hit like a brick wall. Death, and something else, something moldy. As I cut her down to lay her on the carpet, medics arrived. One look, and they backed out. There was nothing they could do. As I placed her on the ground, I noticed the way her fingers were curled, tight, and around nothing, like she died reaching for something that wasn't there. I turned to the mother. "She'd been gone for a while," I said. "Where were you?" Her answer chilled me. "I was playing bingo with a friend," she replied. "I got home, checked on her, found this." But the scene told a different story. There were candles all over the room, at least 8, all still burning. The air was thick, heavy with melted wax and something else, like rot and sadness, the kind of smell that you don't forget. On the walls there were letters, dozens of them, handwritten in jagged lines and taped up in random areas, all addressed to someone named Tim. Some of them had smeared ink, and others were burnt around the edges, like they had been held over an open flame. One of them had the words, "I'm ready," written over and over again in red ink. "Who's Tim?" I asked the mother. She didn't answer. She just pointed to the bed, and there it was. a Ouija board. "Tim," she finally said, "is her boyfriend, but he's dead." I asked her to explain. She told me Abby got the board a few months back. At first, it was just for fun, but then she got obsessed. She made contact with someone named Tim, a spirit, and after that, everything changed. She quit sports, her grades tanked, she wouldn't leave her room, and lately, Abby had been saying that Tim wanted her to join him. I'll admit, I thought it was mental illness, maybe trauma, a delusion that spiraled too far. It's a board game, right? Sold at Walmart, right next to Monopoly. But there was something about that room, something wrong. I've seen a lot of death, but this one stuck. The way the air felt, like it was watching you back. I escorted the mother back to the living room to wait for CID. And when they arrived, I cleared the scene soon after. I wrote my report, went home, business as usual. But the weird part, it didn't end there. That same night, I got home, I took a shower, I turned off the lights, and I laid down. The bedroom light, it turned back on. I figured maybe I didn't hit the switch right, so I turned it off again, not thinking much of it. Then it happened again, and again. By the third time, I stood in the doorway and I watched it flicker to life on its own. And then came the shadows, just barely, like something darting past an open doorway. At first, I chalked it up to stress, maybe fatigue. But then objects started to move. A photo fell from the shelf across the room. Keys tossed onto the counter that would end up in the sink. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't think. Every night, I felt something watching me, following me. It felt like whatever it was in that room didn't stay behind. Now, I've always been a man of faith. I keep a Bible in my patrol car. But that month, I wore a crucifix under my vest. I had my apartment blessed twice. I fasted, I prayed, I wept, and I begged. Eventually, it stopped. Or maybe it just moved on. People tell you not to bring your work home with you, to leave it behind the moment you clock out. But in this job, you don't always get that choice. Sometimes it follows, and sometimes it's not just trauma. Sometimes it's something else. In 16 years of law enforcement, I've seen it all. The darkest corners of humanity, shattered lives, and tragedies that seem to come out of nowhere. Each case, each moment, has pushed the limits of what I thought I understood. But there was one night that still haunts me. One encounter that forced me to question everything I thought I believed. It was October of 2003, just before daylight savings time kicked in. And I was on night shift patrol on the south end of San Antonio, near Spada Mission. I used to love that beat. Old neighborhoods, lots of history, and quiet roads. Most nights it felt like I was stepping back in time. Around 2:10 a.m., dispatch sent me to a suspicious person call on a Spada road. Caller reported a female standing in the roadway, no vehicle in sight. Now usually, that means a drunk wandered off from a party, or maybe someone high or having a breakdown. Anyway, I acknowledged the call, and I made my way there. Now I remember it was foggy, a light ground fog, low and thin, like the kind you see in horror movies. rolling over the asphalt in waves, and quiet. I spotted her just before I got to the bridge, maybe 30 yards up, standing dead center in the middle of the roadway. She was in a white dress, long and old-fashioned. Her hair was black and loose over her shoulders. Her head was down, and she was barefoot. My first instinct, domestic victim. Maybe she ran from something. Maybe she needs my help. So I hit my spotlight. She didn't move. She didn't flinch. She didn't turn. She just stood there, like I wasn't even there. I got out of my patrol car, keeping my flashlight in my left hand and my right on my holster. "Ma'am," I said calmly, "do you need my help?" Nothing. I stepped closer. "We got a call about someone in trouble. Are you hurt?" Still nothing. That's when I noticed something odd. I couldn't hear my own footsteps, the gravel, the dirt. It's like I was walking in a padded room. Even the usual hum of cicadas and crickets. Gone. Just silence. She's maybe 10 feet in front of me now. I can see her feet, caked in mud. Her skin was pale, and her toes were curled slightly like she was gripping onto the ground, like she's holding herself there. I raised my flashlight. "Ma'am." She lifted her head, just slightly, and before my light can reach her face, she was gone. She didn't walk off or run, just vanished, like someone flipped a switch on a projector. I spun around, light sweeping the brush, the road, and the fence line. Nothing was there. I even checked under the bridge. It took me a solid 15 minutes to convince myself that I hadn't had a micro-sleep or a stress hallucination. When I got back to the office, I did what every cop does. I checked. I pulled up my video. I saw myself get out. I watched my approach. And I talked. But there was no one else there but me. Not before, not during, and not after. No woman. Just me. I put in for the original call sheet from dispatch, and I combed through the night shift logs from that area for the past several months. Anything that remotely matched a figure in white, barefoot, strange calls around 2 a.m. And nothing. Then I went deeper. I spent my off hours at Bexar County Archives. I sat in that dusty reading room digging through old missing person files, local incident reports, and any record tied to that stretch of Espada Road. I asked about deaths, accidents, and odd reports. Still nothing. No name, no case file. It's like she never existed. Or like no one was allowed to remember. So I transferred districts. Told myself I was done chasing ghosts. But on nights when I drive by Espada Road, I slow down. I look. And I listen. Because somewhere in that quiet fog, I hope I see her again. I wasn't a believer before. I didn't put stock into stories or shadows. I believed in facts, reports, evidence, things I could write down and file. But that night on Espada Road, that night changed everything. Now, I believe, because I saw her, even if no one else ever will. They say patrol's the best teacher at the PD. You see everything, the good, the bad, and the weird. Enough to make your badge feel heavier than your vest. I did my years in a patrol vehicle before they stuck detective on my nameplate. Now, the small city of Rosenberg, it may not make the news every day, but if you wear the badge long enough here, the town shows you its real face, and it's got layers. I remember the personalities we'd bump into on a daily basis, like a lineup card in my head. You had your regulars, the ones who couldn't stay out of trouble even if they tried. Petty thefts, drunk and disorderly, public urination, every week like clockwork. Then there were the talkers, folks who'd wave you down just to tell you how to do your job better, or how they saw their neighbor's cousin's dog bark twice, and they were sure it meant something. We've got our fair share of runners too. You know the type. Eyes shifty, knees are bouncy. Their hearts are already sprinting before we get the chance to flick on our lights. And the broken ones. Those you don't forget. Victims of things that no one deserves. You try to build a wall inside to keep their stories from leaking into your sleep. But sometimes the bricks, they don't stack high enough. Then there was that call. The one I can't explain. It was late. Welfare check in a subdivision, District 4. Summer Lakes. The caller told dispatch their daughter was going through some kind of mental state, maybe drug-induced. She had been talking about hurting herself, hurting others, even mentioned causing a crash to take out strangers. Let's just say the family was terrified. They wanted her to get evaluated before something bad happened. I made location with another officer. From outside, everything looked normal. The porch light was on, wind chimes moving in dead air. We made contact with the caller, who ushered us upstairs to her daughter's room. For the sake of privacy, I'll call her Linda. We reached the bedroom door, knocked, then opened. The room hit me like a brick wall. Papers were everywhere, crumpled letters, childish drawings, torn pages littering the floor like dead leaves. The air smelled like sweat and pencil shavings. Linda sat in a small desk in the far corner of the room, with her back to us, headphones on, shoulders were stiff, and she was writing on something. I called her name. No response. I stepped forward carefully, not wanting to spook her. The closer I got, the louder her music bled through her headphones, loud and distorted. She kept writing. Her hands moved quick and sharp. My partner noticed it first. The conversation. It wasn't a journal. It was a blank white sheet of printer paper. Her head didn't turn, and her body didn't move. But her eyes, they flicked back and forth like she was reading something that no one else could see. On the paper it said, "There are cops behind you." Are there really? Yes. Kill them. How? With what? The pen in your hand. That's when my stomach went cold. I reached back and I squeezed my partner's shoulder, motioning him towards the hallway. We both stepped back, very slowly. Linda never turned around. She kept writing. I scanned the room for weapons. Nothing but the pen in her hand. We decided to hold off and wait for the crisis team to arrive. And I kept my eye on her. Suddenly she stopped writing, set the pen down, stared at the page in front of her, like it was whispering to her. By the time the crisis team arrived, she was crying. Full body sobs that cut off mid-breath, replaced by long, glassy stares. She wouldn't speak. They took her in for evaluation, cleared the scene, went back to our patrol cars. As I left the neighborhood and pulled onto Reading Road, questions flowed through my mind. I didn't understand. Who was she having a conversation with? How did she know we were there before we made a sound? And why? When I collected the paper for evidence, every line had been scratched out, not erased, not smudged, violently scored through with repeated strokes. Where kill them had been, there were ragged black grooves. The ink bled into angry, unreadable slashes. These words were destroyed, violently obliterated. I would have seen her do that. She was calm, barely moving. She never answered or looked up, but whatever was inside her kept speaking, quietly, dark, and just beyond our reach. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that notification bell for upcoming videos. Stay tuned for our next ghost hunt. Believe me, you don't want to miss it. And like always, be safe.